some people see like a train track or something. Everyone's got a different perception of time. And so essentially with timeline, I work with clients to perceive their timeline. And we notice whether they're actually stood on their timeline or stood next to it, because that's also interesting. Like, so I'm disassociated from my timeline. I see it, I'm not on it. So, but then like if someone's got a problem, like say, I'm not lovable. Okay. So we'd explore that belief. And the idea of timeline is to take them forwards and back along their timeline, almost like time travel in like a TARDIS or something. And you get them to go to identify the first time they had that thought, the first time they created that belief about themselves, like I'm not lovable. And
you got to accentuate the positive. Wow, I feel good. A little bit of feel good goes a long way.
You're listening to Karen Swain, teacher of deliberate creation, accentuating the positive, showing you a way to a better life.
Accentuating the positive, it's not just fad, it's sanity. Who in their right mind would accentuate anything else?
If you feel like that's what you want to do.
Hello and welcome to another show, Accentuating the Positive with Karen Swain. Always a blessing to be with you all again. Look at this beautiful woman I've got to introduce you to. Isn't she gorgeous? Her name is Louisa Tanner Munson. Welcome to the show, Louisa.
oh, thank you for such a beautiful welcome. Good morning.
I'm a bit of a fan of Louisa. She's such a gorgeous light worker, honestly. She had me on her show a couple of weeks ago. I don't know. When was it? A few weeks ago?
It was about 6 weeks ago.
Is it 6 weeks ago? Oh my
yes,
God,
it was.
When you're having fun. And we had a great old gas bag on her show. And I don't know, said a few things. Can't even remember what I said now, but it was fun. A lot of fun. And Louisa, like everyone I've been interviewing lately, is one of our speakers for the Higher Self Expo during the European leg of the journey, because Louisa is in Portugal.
Yes. Good morning from Portugal. I feel like I'm in the Eurovision Song Contest, because that's how they do it, isn't they? Good evening from wherever you're calling from. Yeah, it's international, isn't it?
Yeah, so it's 3 o'clock in the afternoon here in Sydney, Australia, and 6 a.m. for Louisa. Yep. She interviewed me also at 6 a.m. and it's hilarious because she had the baby on the breast.
I may actually end up with a baby on my breast shortly.
I just thought that was fabulous. A classic, just classic. I tell you, no rest for the light weavers of this world during this great time of transition. But let me tell you a little bit about Louisa. She's just amazing. A Brit living in Portugal with a husband and 3 children. Louisa bridges the magic and the everyday with a practical blend of astrology, channeling, NLP and subliminal coaching. Louisa trained in hypnosis, neuro-linguistic programming, timeline therapy, counselling and Reiki, and focuses on self-healing, right mindset and futuring when working with you, small businesses and entrepreneurs. A clairvoyant and clairsentient intuitive channeler, Louisa is a Sagittarius, moon in Pisces, ascendant in Scorpio, who has been hooked on astrology since she was 6 years old. Family comes first always, Louisa says. Having lived in 5 countries, UK, France, Italy, Bali and Portugal, she's worked as a coach and presenter and trainer for over 15 years for UK blue chip companies like banks, charities, adult education and other such organisations. And she says, I'm practicing outing myself as a channel at the moment. She says, it's how I was as a child. When I was very young, I had misgivings about the world I was growing up in. It took me a long time to make sense of what I observed and knew. As a child, I would see things, hear things, and feel things that others couldn't perceive. My life has been an exploration of walking the tightrope between freely being me, a spiritual being I knew myself to be, and being an accepted member of the world. It took me a long time to grow into confidence, into being a bit different. And so I've experimented with living in and out of reality at the same time. As a young adult, Louisa trained in astrology, hypnotherapy, and NLP because it seemed like the least woo-woo thing to do she says, and was the most closely aligned to how she felt at the time. But truthfully, she says, I'm a channel. When I look at a chart, I do interpret the patterns, but really it's just an entry point into the consciousness of the chart, situation, and the person. Same when I look at someone's face or a palm and handwriting, I find myself being pulled into the energy of it. As we go through this time of global awakening, I have felt stirred into action, she says, a bit like a calling. I feel ready to be counted on as a guide for our intuition and working more closely with the cosmic cycles. And you can find out more about Louisa at feelgoodastrology.com. Yeah, so you were one of these total psychic kids, right?
Yes, definitely, yeah.
And your kids must be the same. You must be experiencing that too. Are they the same as what you were?
I don't know, actually. I think they are, but then not living in the same sort of situation. So the way we live, they're just in a kind of place of total acceptance. They're not going to school, where they would have polarity and stuff. They don't sleep in their own bedrooms, where they might have those like slightly scary moments. We've we live a very sort of integrated life. We're sort of homeschoolers, homesteaders, always together. And that sounds really kind of codependent, but actually it really works for us. And so like nothing seems out of the ordinary. They're really kind and caring kids. And we talk about all sorts of stuff that I don't expect children to talk about, but I've not actually really seen them tune into anything per se, because we're always together. It's not like they're kind of wandering. Like my eldest, who's 9, is starting to exhibit a little bit. He drifts off, and you can see he's concentrating on something. Or I heard him having a conversation with some friends, and one of them was saying something about another friend, a mutual friend, and saying, "Oh, he's mean, isn't he?" And my son said, "Well, maybe that's just what you're thinking right now." And he was, let's talk about it. And I was thinking, oh my goodness, he's really like reflective. He's 9. I think he was 8 at the time. So yeah, I think I'm raising reflective kids. And I think they'll come into it.
Oh, beautiful.
I think like with my parents, like they identified things straight away that didn't feel quite right. Like if I was dreamy or I felt things when we went into houses. And apparently when we used to go into houses, like when my mum and dad wanted to move home, I would obviously cry if I didn't want to be there. But where there was a sense of peace, they also said there was this kind of smell that kind of arrived in the house, like an amber kind of smell. And it always seemed to be around me and when I was at peace. And so they would, like they chose the house that, I felt most comfortable in. And so they noticed that and thought that was weird. But what I remember mostly was, just being told things like, I don't think that's real, or I don't think, what you're saying doesn't exist. I used to see things around me as I used to go to bed at night, which was pretty scary. And, my parents couldn't understand it because, it wasn't part of their reality, obviously. And they did their best and stuff. But I was terrified of going to bed sometimes. And so with our children, they've always had their own bedroom, but, they've always chosen to sleep in us. So we've got like bunk beds and a big bed for me and my husband and our small child, our smallest one. And that way, I can monitor if they're being sort of like creeped out by anything in the night,
Yeah, I think kids are creeped out because they're not told it's possible to actually see spirit. I remember my best friend who actually ended up killing herself when she was in her late 30s. She told me when she was a child that she used to wake up at night, see all these people standing around the bed, and it used to completely terrify her and freak her out. But she was just really psychic. I used to be totally fascinated with psychic ability, and I used to drag her along to all these psychic things and channelers and stuff. I remember taking her to a channeler, and a channeler said to her, "Oh, you can do what I do." And I was so pissed off because the channeler didn't say that to me. And I knew that I was here to do that. But she told my friend, who was totally not interested in it. But I just reckon that kids are not told that this is a part of our reality. So they're just completely terrified by it. So your kids have never said, they've never, chatted to their special friends or
oh, well, actually,
invisible friends.
See, this is the thing, like everything is kind of normal in our house. And so I don't really like think, oh, that's unusual. Our little boy, when we were very young, just before I gave birth to my daughter, I was upset about something. I can't remember. You know what it's like when you're about to give birth, you get really hyper emotional. So something was really going crazy and in my emotions, and I was sobbing my heart out. And he was only 3 or 4, and he put his hands on me. He said, "Don't worry, Mum. My other mummy used to get emotional, and it's okay." And I said, "Oh." What are you talking about? And he said, "Oh yeah, I've got another mummy." And I said, "Really? Where?" And he said, "Oh, in Africa. I've got my African family." And then he started to talk about his brothers and sisters, and that he came from a really big family, and not all of them made it. And there were some bits that he kind of didn't want to talk about, and some bits that he was a bit vague in because he was like 3 or 4. And he kept talking about his African family for months. And we were trying to ask him questions and get more out of him. But the moment we were asking, he kind of shied up a little bit. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And then later on, he said, "I've got a secret, Mummy." And I said, "Oh, what's that?" And he said, "My African family doesn't exist. I made it up." And to this day, I don't know if it's actually true or not. I actually think it was true.
Yeah.
And then he was thinking, is that reality actually possible?
Right.
And then he got a bit conscious of, being here. I was like, oh, maybe not. But to this day, I don't know. And if I talk about it, he says, "Shut up, Mummy." He doesn't want me to say anything. So he's really
So how old is he now?
9.
Okay.
But he's a real angel. I mean, like when I was pregnant, I actually heard him speak to me right the way through the pregnancy. So I had, first of all, my husband and I started having prophetic dreams, like the same kind of dream, the same themes each night. And we'd wake up in the morning and say, "Oh," and it felt like while we were pregnant, I was pregnant with him, that we were kind of being upgraded or something, like something incredible was going on to prepare us for him. And I remember running or being at a workshop to do with astrology and spirituality. And this is like 10 years ago now, I guess. And somebody came up to me mid-time during the break and said, your son, he's described how he wants his birthing plan to be. And she just described what I already knew and had already put in place, that he wanted like a crystal grid and for me to be chanting in Sanskrit. Which, for the first part of it, I was, and it was really, really calm. And it was really bizarre that she said it. And then I was at another workshop, and all of a sudden I heard this voice inside my head say, "Mum, say hello to everyone. I really like the people here." And I said back to him in my head, "I can't do that because these people think I'm weird." This is a bit of a theme with me, outing myself. And then somebody came up to me and said, "This is going to sound really strange, but your son just said hello to me." And I was pregnant with him. So like he actually was able to communicate to other people, but he's not really showing it at the moment,
Wow.
But when he does, then yeah, I'll be there to guide him.
The thing about kids is it takes a lot of, patience and focus to bring up children. There's lots to do. You got to feed them. You got to wash their clothes. You got to, educate them. So time is not always your own. And I really wish that I had explored more with my daughter when she was young, her psychic abilities. I did to some extent, but then I was busy, so I didn't. And I only had 1. You've got 3. And I get that, time gets away. But I think that, just asking them questions, like I remember taking my daughter to meet her spirit guides, and she just did it so effortlessly. She's 30 now and she still does it so like when I take her into meditation and just take her where, places to, she's just so amazing at it. She's so, and yet she never thinks to do it in her daily life, like never thinks to call on that, guidance or but she's so amazing at it. But she still thinks it's kind of woo-woo. She loves doing it with me, but then when it comes to like her normal life, she's like, "Oh, I don't want to seem strange around these other people." Not strange like my mother. But yeah, I kind of regret not doing that more when she was little. Just asking her more questions and, taking her on journeys and stuff. Anyway, because they have so much access that they just don't talk about, really.
Yeah, they really do. I did notice that, when my kids were sleeping, when they woke up, they were really upset usually, as a small baby. And it was like, oh, I'm back here. And all I could imagine was, that they actually had these sort of out of body experiences. Those moments where babies actually appear to be dead, like you're looking at them and they're not breathing. And you have that moment of thinking, oh my God, my baby's passed away. And then I put my hand on their chest and all of a sudden they kind of really kind of wake up. I actually think they get so still that they are actually traveling somewhere. I'll never know this for sure, but yeah. I mean, we talk about God and spirituality, not like, God as a particular person, but these kids have got a concept of it. And we're not like actively teaching it, but they have a sense that there is something behind everything, and they're fascinated by animals and stones and flowers and stuff. And they sense the power. They want to make healing potions and things like that. So we'll see. I'm really open to, helping them. They're going to feel fairly weird anyway, because they don't really go to school.
So what do they?
They're going to be like, oh my goodness, I'm so different to everyone.
What do they do for social interaction with other kids? Do you take them to like play with other kids and stuff?
Yeah, we do. I mean, obviously for the last year we haven't really been able to. We do our work in the mornings and early afternoons, and then we go on day trips and stuff like that. We're always going to parks, and we know loads of people, and they've got lots of online friends as well. But actually they also really play together. Although they're all different ages, they play beautifully together. And I guess, and we've just settled somewhere. We've been touring around Portugal for the last 4 years, like staying sort of like 6 months here and moving around quite a bit. But now we're actually in a place where we can get some roots. I'm hoping that, as things open up again, we can get them to some clubs and stuff that interest them.
Yeah. When I spoke to you 6 weeks ago, you had just moved into your new home. How are you finding it? Is it good?
Yeah, it's really nice. We've been out in the garden a lot. We've got their trampoline up. Yesterday, a duck arrived on site, just came out of nowhere. And so we had to walk around the village holding this like little baby duckling, walking around trying to find its owners. So all these lovely kind of natural things are going on at the moment. We're growing things. We went up into the orchard yesterday and came back with loads of apricots and plums and peaches. And so we've got a really nice outdoors kind of lifestyle. It's nice, yeah.
So whereabouts in Portugal are you? Are you down near the Algarve, or you're on that?
We're on the
coast.
Yeah, we're on the west coast. We're about 20 minutes from the beach, and just north of north of Lisbon. So it's a really great area actually. So we go to the beach quite a lot. And
what made you go and live in Portugal? Were you in the UK before you went to Portugal, or were you somewhere else?
I was in the UK. I was in Bali, living out there, loving it. And I came back to England, just thinking I was coming back to earn some money, like with one of my freelance training jobs. And there was a crash, like a financial crash. And all of a sudden I was stuck at my parents' with no money. And that's when I met my husband. Like these things happen to get our attention. I was stuck there for about a month thinking, oh no, I'm going to get back to where I love. I loved Bali or loved Bali. And thought I was going to spend, the rest of my life there. I felt very, very sort of like grounded there. But yeah, I was stuck at my parents. So I was doing sort of hypnotherapy jobs for anyone that needed it. And one of their friends needed some hypnotherapy, and she knew my husband and said, oh, you should speak to him. He has a show. He looks for astrologers and light workers and stuff. And so, yeah, that's what happened. We got together. And anyway, how did we end up out here?
So you met him on his podcast show, did you?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, the Barefoot Broadcast. And
broadcast.
Yeah, so like 10 years ago, there was this this undercurrent of this like romance developing, and so all of his listeners, realized that when he was interviewing me, something was going on. It happened very quickly.
Nice.
But yeah, I don't know, I like, I'm sure you do as well, but I like to keep abreast of what's going on in the world, and I question things quite a lot. And for a long time, we had this feeling that there was going to be a big collapse, and that we needed to get as kind of resourceful as we could. And, we were thinking about how we could raise our kids in England, and we wanted to be able to all spend a lot of time together. And it seems really difficult, like looking at house prices and actually how much money you can earn for, working and stuff. Most Brits, to be able to have their own house, they need 2 or 3 jobs between 2 of them. And, that just didn't seem compatible with what we wanted to achieve, for our family. And so we started looking around, and we wanted a place that had lots of land, and we were drawn to Portugal. And funnily enough, a lot of the people that I've met on my travels, like in Bali, and in people that go to all these different centers, like Costa Rica, Hawaii, and Byron and stuff, a lot of them do come around Portugal way.
Wow.
There's loads of healers and light workers sort of gravitating towards this area. And there's so many houses, empty houses in Portugal. Yeah. They have a net migration, like they're like a minus net migration. They have more people leaving than arriving.
Really?
So yeah. Historically, in the 60s, 50s, 60s, 70s, lots of Portuguese people went and worked in France, and all over Europe, where there were better prospects. And those Portuguese people stayed there, raised their families there. And then they only come back, when they're really, really old, to retire. But a lot of Portuguese people just live everywhere else. There's loads in South Africa, in England, Canada and stuff. And so when we came here, there's just lots of space.
Wow.
Loads of space. And they need more people to have babies here.
Wow.
so it's kind of an easy place to kind of settle, really.
So do you see yourself staying there?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Do you speak Portuguese?
No.
And everyone speaks English?
No, but I do speak French. And so I've made, like when I need Portuguese and I just can't cut it, I go to French. And a lot of, if they're sort of 50 and over, a lot of them will speak French fluently. But I mean, if they're younger than, if they're around 40 and younger, then they'll all speak English. So, or mostly.
Yeah.
But we get by, that's what you do when you go to a different country, and we will learn it.
So where were you living in Bali? Were you in the hills or on the coast?
In the hills,
near
and around Ubud. Yeah. On the outskirts of Ubud, not right in the center.
Yeah.
In the forest. It was really cool. It was great. What a beautiful place.
It is beautiful, and something I was there a few years ago, and I was there like 30, 40 years ago, and then I went back a couple of times over the last few years. And I couldn't get over how crowded and polluted and built up it had become. And my prayer was, oh, wow, I wish, it really needed an overhaul, because it had gone crazy. It just gone mad. It just gone crazy. Too much infrastructure, too many people, too much pollution. The beaches were filthy. And then COVID hits, and like Bali gets completely cleaned up. And I'm thinking, I would so love to go back and see what's happened. Because I saw there's a documentary on all the people cleaning all the rivers, but obviously all the people that were in tourism had to go back they went back to farming, they went back to the old traditional ways. And it was amazing what happened to Bali over COVID and over, 2020. Yeah, 2020.
Yeah, I mean, the people there are absolutely beautiful. I learned so much. I was really grateful actually that I was living in Bali before I'd met Carl and started having babies, because when I was out there, I actually lived on a compound with a Balinese family, not in there, they had lots of extra buildings and I rented one from them. But I got to see what family life is like. And if you're Balinese, children don't get put down, like babies don't get put down. They are carried until they can walk themselves. And it's not always the mum that's carrying them. Obviously, in our setup, it's pretty much me or Carl. We baby wear until they get old enough. But, like cousins, aunts, uncles, everyone's carrying the baby. And, they all live with their extended families. I was talking to my driver out there, and he just said, we see them like gods. They are like, elevated spirits. You know, they're really special people, and they just absolutely revere their children in a way that, like when I was growing up, the idea was, you know, if you're a child, you should be seen and not heard.
Exactly. That's how I grew up too.
Yeah.
Seen and not heard. I thought that was so unfair as a child. I'm like, are you
definitely?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, I've got vague memories of like crying in a pram in a hallway and not being listened to, knowing that, you know, my parents were in another room. And I think, you know, I don't know. I'm really grateful for the Bali experience because it, you know, and the promptings of some other good women around me who said, hey, you might want to try attachment parenting or have a look at this. And
it's very
done it
Canadian. I was speaking to someone on the show called Penny Kelly, who identifies as Palladian, you know, Palladian starseed here on Earth. Incredible. She's in her 70s now. Unbelievably. She's unbelievable. She's one of my favorite people. Anyway, she was saying that when she began to remember her Palladian ancestry, she started looking into it and she started talking to them and saying, you know, what's important, what have you got to teach us? And that's exactly what they said. They said the most important thing on the Pallades is, like, the most important job you can have is the bringing up of the children. And they like revere them like gods. And she had a slew of kids and she was a busy working mum, and she was like, oh, okay. I haven't actually been that attentive. She sort of changed her ways after she had the Palladians tell her that it's the most important thing you can do. And I thought that was.
I mean, it's really funny because you know, from an early age, I always just wanted to become a mum. Although, you know, nobody really knew that. I didn't really admit it. But when I fell in love for the first time, you know, with, you know, my first Mr. Right, who I never married, but I always wanted to have children. But like the moment I fall in love, something inside me erupts and I just know I want to be a mum. And I've always felt that actually that was what I was supposed to be doing, that was the job. And it was really frustrating that, you know, we live in a world whereby we're supposed to earn money and, you know, do all these things. You know, surely, like when I look around, other animals don't have to busk for a living. They just know what they're supposed to be doing, you know. They don't have to pay their way because they are their way, you know. And it just never made sense to me. I couldn't understand it. So I, you know, spent a lot of my time trying to sort of busk my way through life and find out how I could do it. But it wasn't until I was with the right partner that everything just fell into place. And then you realize, actually, you know, you can never have enough money before you have children. You can never be too secure. And actually it just works anyway. You know, you just,
it just all falls into place.
Yeah.
So let's get into your astrology. So you were obsessed with it since the time you were 6, it says in your bio.
Yeah, I'm born on the cusp. I'm born at the winter solstice on the 20th of December, just the day before. And, you know, my mum said I was a Sagittarius and a Capricorn, and that got my interest. She said I was special. And that's what every kid wants to hear, isn't it? You know, when they're young. And so I just started like learning, reading horoscopes, first of all, which weren't really that interesting. But then I remember when I was about 11, getting pocket money, and I just went to a bookshop and bought books on astrology, like a compendium of healing. You know, it had like palmistry in, how to develop your intuition, your psychic skills. And I just went through the book and just went from there. But I was just fascinated. You know, I couldn't work out why I felt so different and why I think so much, first of all. But I was really fascinating that people can have these different skills and types and stuff like that, and that it can be seen. And I wanted to map it out as soon as I could. I wanted to find out what my purpose was, or, you know, I've got this kind of quest. And I guess if I'd had older people around me who could navigate that with me, then I probably wouldn't have even needed to buy the book. But that was obviously my journey, you know. But yeah, I've just went from book to book to book. And eventually, you know, as I got out and into the world and started working and, you know, like part-time jobs and stuff, I came across teachers. They always show up at the right time, you know, but they didn't really come into my house like my mum and dad. Their friends weren't exactly, you know, going to be teachers on intuition or spirituality for me.
So when did you notice that you were channeling? Did you just notice that it was just so easy, the information was just coming so easily, like you didn't have to remember anything or look stuff up in books?
It was when I was practicing palmistry. I remember going on a coach tour with my family, and I'd been learning about palmistry. And so it was a really long tour. And so I just went up and down the aisles of the coach, holding people's hands and reading them and saying, I can read your fortunes and let's see what comes up. And yeah, I all of a sudden I would say these things that I hadn't actually read in a book, but I just knew, and I couldn't put my finger on it, and people would confirm it. And then it became a bit of a party piece, like if I went to parties and things like that, because by that time I was in my mid-teens, and I would just pick up a hand. I remember hanging out with some guys and reading one of their hands. I said, oh, that's really unusual. You've got like a spiritual brother with you. There's somebody with you all the time. You're really attached, and I can't quite put my finger on it. But, I said, there's something really strong and unusual in your family. And he just burst into tears and he said, well, yeah, my best friend is actually my brother. And they were, they were different colors. One was black, one's white. And I couldn't quite compute it. And he'd been adopted into a white family and had, at that time felt this sense of, utter relief and gratitude, that he had this wonderful family around him, and his best mate was actually his brother. And I had no idea of knowing that. And I don't think there's, an adopted, into a different family kind of line, but I just knew it. And it kind of went from there, really. So I just had to trust it.
So you had to trust it. So that was the first time that you thought, oh, wow, how did I know that? Yeah.
I don't know even if I had that thought. There were times when I would just start speaking and it would kind of automatically flow through me. I'd find my vibe, and then all of a sudden, boom, there it is. And then I remember being babysat by, a couple of sort of elders in our community, I guess. And the woman, she sort of said, look, I know you're intuitive. And this was quite a big moment. And so I sat in the back room with her, and she put her hands, I think she must have given me some Reiki on my head or something. And she just said, close your eyes. And then all of a sudden, through my eyelids, I could actually see through my eyelids, and I saw all of my family, all of my descendants and ancestors around me. And there was this real sense of celebration, that I could see. It was as if I was looking out of my eyes. And then when I opened my eyes, and I was sat in a room with mirrored wardrobes, like facing these mirrored wardrobes. And in the mirror, I could see all these people. I was surrounded. And that was a huge moment to realize that I could connect in like that. And then I started getting messages left, right, and center. And I had glandular fever, and I was in and out of a bit of a temperature and sort of hallucinating. And I heard a voice in my head that said, get a pen, get a piece of paper. And I started writing reams of poetry, and that went on for a couple of months. So yeah, lots of stuff kind of happened. But I didn't really put too much on it, because my parents were always a bit surprised and a little bit, a bit wary about it.
How old were you when that was happening to you?
I think I was about 16. And then it carried on until I was about 22. And then I heard from my guide at the time, who said, you need to actually live your life now. You need to love, have some loss. You need to do all these normal things, but I'll be back again. And then, and that's actually what happened in my 20s. I went through a very kind of selfish kind of career me first stage, where I was really trying to show the world who I was. And intuition didn't come into it at all. It was about, making my way and, sort of aggressively pushing. And it was really ambitious, I guess, showing that I could be as good as everyone else and whatnot. But I knew something wasn't right, and I got ill. I felt this kind of wasting away of my energy, being in that world, 9 to 5, Monday to Friday. Something was off, and all of those thoughts I'd had as a kid, like, why do I have to earn money? Why can't I just, why do humans have to do this? I used to think that from a small age, like, why do we have to work Monday to Friday, 9 to 5? What's the point of that? I couldn't, as a child, I used to think, the purpose of life, it's this gift, and yet you spend most of it in this kind of incarceration. I remember really feeling off about it. And then in my 20s, I just completely embraced it. But I started reconnecting and thinking, this is off. This feels wrong, and how do I get out of it? And so I spent around the time of Saturn return having a nervous breakdown. Like my chronic fatigue syndrome, which like my glandular fever turned into, had a full-blown attack, and I was sort of in bed for about 13 months. So I couldn't work. And then I just had to kind of find my way through, and it was really messy. It wasn't very elegant how I did it. My relationship fell apart, my job fell apart.
That'll do it.
It wasn't elegant. It was a really messy time. And that relationship fell apart, and it was all perfect, that everything sort of cleared out. And I started thinking, well, yeah,
I have to say,
I want to work. Go on. I just I'd been working for banks loads in my rush, to do well in life, and insurance companies. And I just remember thinking, I don't want to work for these companies to make them loads of money. I'd seen how they made money. I was in a kind of profit and loss kind of department where I'd see, how they build other departments. If they lost money in the banks, they would charge all the different departments, even though they're all part of the same thing. They would charge like an operations loss kind of fee to all people who made mistakes, and they would claim it in. And I just saw so many different ways that they were making money, on like intra-night trading deals and things. Like they'd put vast amounts of money onto a stock overnight and then claim it back in, and there was just all these different things going on. And I just thought, why am I doing this? I'm making these organizations really rich. Why aren't I doing this for people? Why aren't I helping people? And so it all kind of ground to a halt, and I made some changes. Sorry, I was interrupting you.
I forget what I was going to ask you now. Anyway, I was just thinking as you were telling me that story about the banks making money a few years back. I don't know how long ago. A few years back, I went to a business success seminar. Somebody had a ticket. I would never do these things in this time of my life, in the last decade. But somebody said, I've got this free ticket. You want to come? Anthony Robbins is one of the keynote speakers. And I'm like, oh, wow. I used to go like 20, 30, 35 years ago, I did his stuff. I'm thinking, I wonder where Anthony Robbins is in his life right now. There was a whole slew of other teachers teaching you how to make money. Make money. And they're all rah, rah, rah. And there's thousands of people in this big hall. And I remember I was disgusted at the whole thing, to tell you the truth, Louisa. One of the ways was because of the housing crisis in the States, there were people that couldn't pay their mortgages anymore, and they'd been kicked out of their homes. And so there was all these houses in the States that were going for cheap as chips. And so this guy was saying, you can pick up a house for $20,000, $30,000 because the bank can't sell it. It's worth more than that, but the bank's just trying to offload it, and then you can renovate it and make a buck on it. And all I could think of, you're asking us to make profit on somebody else's misfortune, loss. Yeah. And I just was disgusted at this, just like, what has this world become, is what I thought, really. Just this craze to make money, make money, be successful, make money, go on holidays. And it's your classic motivational speech with like, what are you going to do with all your money? You're going to go on holiday, you're going to buy a Ferrari, it's just this material pump. Anyway. And I'm thinking, God, you should buy these houses and give it back to the people that couldn't afford the mortgage. That's what I thought. They'd been homeless, thrown out of their houses, and then the bank is selling it off for something that they probably could afford to pay a mortgage on, like $20,000. They probably owed $100,000 on the house, and the bank's selling it for $20,000. Anyway, yes, life. Yes, I can well imagine that being in the banking industry would have been a bit of a wake-up call. That's what I was going to say. You said it wasn't very... your spiritual awakening wasn't very pretty or something, and I'm thinking... Everyone I've spoken to on the show that's had a spiritual awakening has never been very pretty. It's always because of contrast, usually.
Yeah. I mean, I haven't had a full-on spiritual awakening, like, people who are kind of like, they've kind of ascended, or, they've, their whole mind has been blown apart. That's not happened to me, but I've had these moments of awakening to the reality of myself and thinking, there's a bit to do here. I skipped over a massive part, I realized, because when I was 18, I was supposed to go to university and I just couldn't muster the energy to do it. I just thought, no, this isn't me. I don't want to. I mean, I was going to do philosophy and fine art because I always studied things I was interested in. But I couldn't see the point in going to university because, like, what was it going to lead to? You know, I just couldn't see it. And all I knew was that I wanted to feel free. And I had this dream shortly after finishing school. And I had this dream, and my dead granddad came to me and said, wherever you go, whatever you do, we'll be there. We'll look after you. Things will be okay. And I just woke up in the morning and knew I needed to leave England and go to France. And so I said to my mum and dad, I'm leaving, I'm going to France. And they were like, what? You're supposed to be going to university. And I was like, no, it's not going to happen. I'm off to France. And they said, well, where are you going to get the money from? I said, oh, it's fine. It's going to happen. And I went around to my nan's and my nan was like, here, have some money. And so my dad dropped me off at Dover so I could get there's a little ferry between England and France. And I think his last words to me were, have a great time. Why can't you be normal? And then I remember getting over to Calais, the port in France, and sat down and cried because I was 18 and I was in another country away from my parents thinking, what have I done? Like, oh my goodness. And I got a map of France out in front of me, and I grabbed my necklace and I just kind of swung it like pendulum style, and it landed around La Rochelle. And so I thought, okay, that's where I need to go. And I heard my granddad's poem in my head, and I was just guided. And so I didn't have much money, actually. You know, I'd been loaned a really small amount or gifted from my grandmother. But I got the train from Calais to Paris, and en route, I met this really friendly guy who was helpful. I had he said, don't get the train straight after, get the one in the evening. It'll be tons cheaper. And that's what I did. And I got to La Rochelle, and I just thought, okay, what do I need to do? I need to get a coffee. I need to have a shower. And so I just thought, let's find a campsite. And so I wandered onto a campsite, sat in the cafe on the campsite, had a shower, like caught a shower for free, had a coffee. And then there was a couple of people, and they were having this like conversation, and I overheard them. They were English, and they had, they'd lost a member of staff. And so they needed somebody to do some cleaning of tents and things like that. And so I said, hey, I'm here. do you need this? And they were like, yeah, great timing. And so the place where this person had been staying, that was my home. And I cleaned tents. And they had loads of food because, loads of people when they camp, they leave all the food when they leave and stuff like that. And so I'd literally followed my instinct, arrived on this campsite, found work, found a place to stay, found food, and found friendly people around me. And they said, right, in this time, you need to go and look for work because this is only going to be for 3 weeks. And so I just thought, okay. And I worked, and then I went and sat on the beach. I didn't go looking for work at all because I just expected it was going to turn up. And sure enough, about 2 days before I was due to leave, their boss turned up and said, oh my goodness, I need a rep for another campsite. Someone's gone missing. And they said, oh, we know somebody. And then I was just like carted off to another campsite. And this went on for a few years, actually. So I worked in France as a campsite rep, and I loved it. And actually that was what was going on for me in my late 20s. I was thinking, I loved those times. They were really simple. I didn't need much money. Okay, I wasn't thinking about my future. I couldn't have retired or anything, but I lived in a tent. And I had a really nice, like a simple bed, really nice cooker and fridge. It was really simple. I was in the fresh air all the time. And I used to just clean tents, and then I would welcome people when they arrived. And anyone that had had my education, would have said, why are you doing this? You could do so much. But actually it was the happiest I was so happy just in that really lovely kind of bubble. Like on a campsite, you don't really get the news. There's no TVs in your tent, so you're not doing all those usual things. So I was just walking around with a cassette player Walkman. You know how you used to listen to music? Like only people like above the age of 40 will know that. But I used to be listening to the Rolling Stones whilst cleaning a tent in the sunshine. It was bliss. And that's what I wanted to get back to, the simplicity. And that's why we're living in Portugal, really, because, you know, it's nice. It's nice weather. It's simple. It's beautiful.
I love
feel
that
free.
story.
And that's how my spirit, you know, I was always guided to do that.
Yeah. Yeah, well, we're all always guided. That's the thing. I just think you're aware. I remember backpacking around Europe when I was in my 20s, and I didn't feel like I had spirit guides talking to me because I just used to call it my common sense.
Yeah.
But I just went from one place. So I met someone on a train. Oh, we're going here. You want to come? Yep. Go there. And then I just like, it was amazing. I often thought about that when I was older, how effortlessly easy everything just unfolded, and it never occurred to me that life could be any different. It was just so like, this is life, this is what happens. And I didn't see the magic in it at the time. I really didn't.
Yeah.
I
mean, I've actually gone into some really jammy positions. Like I've found myself in some great jobs. And just walked into things. I have this habit of being in the right place at the right time, always.
Yeah.
And I guess since I've become a mum, that was the best one, you know, being in the right place at the right time to meet my husband. And since then, I've gone into this whole motherhood phase. And I like to think that as I move out of the motherhood phase, I mean, I'll never not, but, you know, as my kids get older, that the magic of the sort of campsite days will re-erupt. Because actually, if I'm not with my children, the next best thing for me is just being in nature, like growing plants. I love plants.
Yeah.
There's so much peace from being in nature.
I can hear you. I was just thinking about, when did I stop being in the flow and just letting magic just run my life? And it was when I became, you know, got married and became a mom. And I did that in my late 20s, and just the pressure of having to, you know, raise a family, feed a family, pay the rent, that just seemed to like pummel down on top of you. And that magic of being free and easy, bright and breezy, and just letting life take you wherever it wanted to take you just stopped in those days. But it seems to me that, you know, with your young family, you're still in that magic, you know, traveling around, even though you've got the young family, not feeling like you have to be in one place and be secure and all that sort of thing. It's sort of magic still weaving through your life.
Definitely. We're putting roots down now, and it feels really great.
But even where you live was pretty magic, like where you're living now. You told me this. Do you want to share that story?
Yeah. A couple of details have changed. It's pretty magic. Like when I was talking about how I really loved how the Balinese lived, I got really switched on to the fact that we should be multi-generational, you know, that we should have everyone living together and helping out. Because actually, attachment parenting is all well and good, but it's really hard to do in the Western world, because you can't be attached to your kids whilst you're also working. It's really hard. It's almost like an impossible task. And because I wanted to do extended breastfeeding, you know, I wanted my children to let me know when they didn't need milk anymore. I didn't want to have to force them off. And kind of like when you go back to work, that is when you it almost spells the end of that closeness, doesn't it? So I was thinking, how does it work? And so we were sort of like, Carl and I, as my husband, you know, we were saying we should be living in multi-generational communities. And so one of our plans of coming to Portugal was that we could buy more land and invite our parents out to enjoy themselves and to have a really great life. And sure enough, neither of our parents actually want to come and stay with us. The thought of it must be horrendous to them, because they just gave us a flat no. But we still had this thinking, and my husband's pretty magical himself. He's really good at finding himself in these places, and he's just been saying, well, we'll get matched up with somebody else. And this year we had invitations from 3 different people for home ideas. So a lovely lady from North America who is like a kinesiologist, she said, I want to buy a house with a granny annex, and I want you guys to live in the house. I just want the annex. You can live there for free. All I ask is that you grow vegetables and you make me welcome. I'm going to be doing my travels. And we were saying, yeah, that'd be really cool and groovy, because she's really awesome. So we looked into that, and it didn't quite work out, because she wanted to go down south to the Algarve, and the house prices are much, much higher. And so she actually couldn't end up like finding a house with a granny annex. And so we didn't actually find what we needed. And so we just kind of parked it as the idea. And then somebody that my husband has been working with, a lovely lady in her 80s. They've been doing a show, quite regularly. And I hadn't realized, but she'd been kind of watching us. My husband's a broadcaster. And so he's pretty, everybody kind of knows our business a little bit, or thinks they do. They've got this idea as to who we are. And she'd been following our kind of journey. And she put it to us. She said, look, I've got this really big house and it's kind of separated in different areas. And I invite you to come and live with us. We do kind of contribute, with the rent. But essentially, we've kind of adopted a granny. So where our own parents didn't want to be with us and her kids don't want to be with her either. And so we're kind of like orphans matching up. And so we live in half the house and she lives in her part of the house, and we share a kitchen together and a dining room area. And we do stuff together, and we're kind of living as a family. And it's weird, it's only like 6 weeks in, so egoic stuff's going to come up, but she's actually pretty groovy and really wants to stick around to talk about what happens. And so we've got plans to do stuff in the garden. She's got an orchard, there's tons of space. We can have our chickens, we've got our dogs, and it's in the middle of nowhere as well. So we can walk out, and there's these beautiful country walks, beautiful sunsets. We're only, a short drive from our favorite beach. And the conditions that we've got here are that we stay and we help, and we all participate together. We live as a family and we help her. And she said, if you leave, you have to take me with you. We are family now. So she's kind of like married to us, which is a bit, it takes your head a little bit to get around.
I just think that's so beautiful. I really do.
Yeah. And what she said is when she, in the event of her passing away, that she's got a contract put in place to say that we can live in the house for 5 years and we don't have to move. So we've got like the assurance that that's all well and good.
Wow.
We can't be kicked out. And so what we're going to do is keep her vision going, because she's got a very strong vision for the land. And it's a really nice one, and we're kind of keeping it going. She's got more than she can cope with, and so we're here to help.
That's so beautiful.
And we've got the energy, and we're a good match.
Is she Portuguese or is she English?
She's a Brit.
She's a Brit, another Brit.
Yeah.
Another Brit in Portugal. Oh,
there are so many. I mean, we do want to get more integrated with Portugal for sure, and COVID hasn't helped. We used to go out every day with the kids and go to different places and go shopping and chat and hang out and stuff like that. And we haven't been able to do that, but hopefully that'll happen again.
Oh, I feel like I want to totally come to Portugal now, but I don't know.
Totally should.
I don't know if I'll be able to travel for a while anyway.
You're very welcome when you do.
We'll see what happens with the whole, the new passports and all that sort of thing, because I'm not going to partake in the net.
No.
So it's going to be interesting. I think it'll all calm down in years to come. So I just feel like I have to just bide my time, really. Yeah, but we haven't talked about astrology at all.
No, I mean, that's funny. I mean, I spend so much time doing astrology and coaching and working with people. But so what would you like to know about astrology?
I don't know. As I said to you before, I used to study it years ago, and it was so vast that I just thought, oh my God, it would take lifetimes to really understand it. And so I had to put it to bed, and I don't really think about it so much. I remember when I was studying it, I was talking to a girlfriend that's not into all this stuff, saying, oh, when you understand how people are, then you can understand why they do the things they do. And she goes, oh, right. So if someone's a dickhead, you can just say, oh, it's because they're this sign, and then you just excuse them for being a dickhead. And I said, yeah, basically. And she said, that doesn't sound very good to me. That's what she said.
I mean, you can look at some charts and go, ooh, it does look like some people are, born with slightly easier charts, and some people have got, kind of slightly terse charts. It's fascinating. I think I got into it because I like to be able to help people. Really like to help people. Once I got to the point of decoding what my chart was saying about me, I just wanted to use it as a tool to help people find their way. I've had, a breakdown and I did have some alcohol issues along the way as well. And I suffered from depression. I had illness and all sorts of different things. So I feel like my life has given me a lot of grounding into all the kinds of different problems that people have. I've been broke. I've had money. I've done well in business. And then I've kind of like thrown it all away on a whim, so I can really appreciate.
You've lived, honey, you've lived.
Yeah, I have. I really have lived really fully, actually. I really have. So first of all, I started studying it when I was 20. And so all through my 20s, when I was like working my nuts off trying to do stuff and gain experience, I still was studying it. And obviously did my NLP and also did like hypnotherapy training as well and timeline therapy training. And so behind the scenes, I would use my skills and help people if they needed it. And then in my 30s, I started doing it and said, I'll buy donation, if you want some. So I was running my business because at that point I had my own training business and I was out here, there and everywhere. But I used to do it on the side. And I collected all my feedback. And when I went to live in Bali, which was a completely other story, I left everything in the UK and said, right, that's it. I need to cut free from the sort of energy of before and let's have an adventure. And it was guided. But when I went there, I started picking it up. And that's how I busked my way through Bali. And I shouldn't have done it. I didn't have a work permit. So it's lucky I didn't get caught because I would have been, sent home and never been able to return. But my plan was to, just carry on using astrology and doing kind of psychic readings at the same time. And people just gravitated towards me. It wasn't that difficult. People heard about me and where I did something, it's a bit shaky at first when you start doing it sort of professionally. But yeah, I just kind of, you have to have some skin in the game. You have to put yourself out there. You have to like let go of that vulnerability and that shame of not being good enough. And I also had my cards with me. So I did card readings as well. So I just really did whatever the client wanted. And sometimes that involved, like doing the readings and then them saying, well, I've got this going on. And so I used hypnotherapy. And so it kind of all blended together. And I met this fantastic guy called Rick Purcell, who's got a beautiful retreat center. In fact, I'm going to be having a conversation with him straight after this. We have a weekly catch up and we did some facilitation together. So we ran a few workshop groups and things like that. And then I started thinking this is where I should be. And then when I met my husband and got knocked up pretty much straight away with our intuitive child. By that time I was doing my like business training in the background in the UK, like once or twice a month, and it brought in a lot of cash. But as a stay-at-home mum, I started to get an hour here and an hour there, and I'd just start to blog, and then people would start asking. And so just did it like that, just really slowly did it. But, one of the problems with being an intuitive worker is you can sense when you might need like to earn some money. Obviously, it, and when people might be coming to you, but there's no regularity to it, so like you can't really retire on it because you might get loads of readings around the time of the solstice or in times of great change, like COVID is amazing for most intuitives, I think. I think everyone's businesses have really taken off because the level of uncertainty is huge. People need guidance and clarity. And so I was thinking, well, how can I make this work in a way that's going to help people the most? And because like the first aid astrology, where someone has a problem, they come to you and all you're doing is putting a plaster over them, a cosmic plaster. And that just didn't feel good because I could see that actually they needed more hand holding or they needed to be guided on a step-by-step thing. And so I just contacted all of my clients and said, look, I'm going to start a membership and this is how much it costs. And each month you're going to get a short, like 20-minute bespoke reading about your month ahead, completely personalized to you. And you'll also be able to ask me a question mid-month, should you need it. And everyone that comes on board, I spend a good hour with them, usually talking about their aims, where they want to go in life and this, that, and the other. And they can send me emails through the month. And I was really shocked when it all just like started to work. It's really incredible, because everyone just snapped my hand off. Everyone that I'd worked with over the last 10 years was like, yeah. And I just was expecting loads of rejection, but in fact, people just signed up. And in fact, my retention is brilliant. So I've been working with the same group of people, like solidly on a month-by-month basis for almost 3 years now, and it's just growing. And so it's just changing. You know, I now do more coaching. So within that, I also said to guys, you know, if you actually want like a monthly session with me, where you know you can talk and I listen. And I listen intuitively, and then I channel. I can also do NLP. And so there are people, I've got some people that consult with me once a week for an hour, some every fortnight, some once a month. And so like they get the astrology, but they get it's a relationship, you know, I'm looking out for them, and it's a friendship. And actually what I'm doing is actually doing what I needed when I was really small. I'm just providing a bit of support and advice, and it can get cosmic. Sometimes it's really not. You know, sometimes I might actually need to help them practically, you know, with my advice. And we just take it from there. So it's really about the client. It's client-centered, and it's very much like how I parent. You know, it's just child-centered. And so I just found myself doing what I like doing and earning nice money from it, and having such a great time. So that's how I use it.
Wow, that sounds amazing. I think this is really going to help people who are thinking about, you know, wow, what they can do with their business, listening to your story. And there are some people that are working, and some people thinking that I could do this, I can do this. And yeah, just listening to the way that your story's unfolded, I think is really, really, really helpful. Yeah.
Thanks, Karen. I mean, if I had a typical customer, they are the types of people who are going through a big change and they're uncertain about it. And often they are people who've been very mainstream, who now want to live according to their own rules and find their way in the world. And I think that's why I say I kind of like bridge the magic and the mundane.
Magic and the mundane, yeah.
You know, I kind of help people find their way. And I feel like that, you know, like those people that have had their full spiritual awakening, all of a sudden kind of they move up a level, don't they? Or they're altered forever. And I feel like I've got one foot in that camp and one foot very much grounded in, you know, real things as well.
Yeah,
that's what I kind of offer my clients.
Having a spiritual awakening is it shifts your paradigm, because you think you're one person, and then you wake up and you go, I'm actually not that person. And then
you're actually not that at all.
I'm not that at all. And then you say, well, I'm not. Oh, who am I? And that's the journey. You know, you've got to like, who we are is source energy, and source energy is not anything really, but if I know that I'm this magical being, what am I going to do with my life? I'm not this limited being. I'm a magical being. So if I'm magical, what do I want to do with my life? And that can be very confusing for many people. Listen, I want to ask you, what is timeline therapy? Is that what it's called? Timeline therapy?
It's actually quite magical. It's kind of like an offshoot of NLP. So it came from that kind of world, the neuro-linguistic programming world. And Tad James, the guy who kind of coined it or developed it, I think he passed away this year. So we lost a really cool person there. But essentially, everyone's got a timeline. Like, I'm going to ask you a question. How do you perceive your diary in your head? I have, like, I don't know, ever since I was a small child, I've got this kind of pop-up diary in my head.
Yeah, and, I don't have a diary in my head. No.
How do you perceive your diary? Like, some people might have. You don't? Okay. No. You're very timeless. But I mean,
I'm absolutely in the moment. I rarely think, I've never been a diary.
So everyone has this kind of different perception of time. And like, for me, I see like this diary in my head, and I can see where I've got appointments, and I can kind of shift it along a bit like in one of those films, you know, where they've got these like pop-up displays and you're going like this to see where to go. And, you know, some people have like lines, some people see like a train track or something. Everyone's got a different perception of time. And so essentially with timeline, I work with clients to perceive their timeline And we notice whether they're actually stood on their timeline or stood next to it, because that's also interesting. Like, so I'm disassociated from my timeline. I see it, I'm not on it. So, but then like if someone's got a problem, like say, I'm not lovable. Okay. So we'd explore that belief. And the idea of timeline is to take them forwards and back along their timeline, almost like time travel in like a TARDIS or something. And you get them to go to identify the first time they had that thought, the first time they created that belief about themselves, like I'm not lovable. And we don't necessarily go into the memory, we kind of hang above it and look down on it and analyze it from a third party perspective and try and learn about it. But then we go back in time to before that thought ever existed, because there would have been a time when you didn't believe that you were unlovable, and when you realized that you're completely lovable. And it might have been in childhood, it might have been in the womb, it might have been in a past life, it could be in a completely different time space reality. But essentially I guide people to find the root cause and explore that, and then take them to before that happens so they can experience it, and we get them feeling all the senses. So, what does it look like to feel completely lovable? What does it sound like? How does it feel? And then get them to really sit in that timeline and feel it, and then take the energy of it, whoosh, right the way through back to modern times, and then, or to now times, and then to take it into the future. So that if I was to say, so Karen, this big meeting that you've got in 3 weeks' time, and you might be feeling unlovable or whatever, how do you feel now from this altered perception? And it changes your perception, and it also recodes all your experiences along the way. So usually, before we get started on this bit of time travel, I'd say to people, so think of 3 times when you've really felt this unlovable, I'm not lovable enough. And they'll describe like 3 key moments and grade them, like rate them out of 10, like how strong they were. And then at the end of it, we'll go back to those as a calibration test to see what's happened. And it always works out, it always works out that they feel like it almost doesn't matter anymore. So it takes the sting out. And it's really, really cool because you can use it again and again and again for different emotions and feelings. And
yeah, as you speak about it, I'm thinking that we did this with the matrix energetics. Did you ever study matrix energetics?
No.
Yeah, it's a similar.
Yeah.
That's the thing about these therapies. They come through many different people, many different people that are channeling different healing modalities, and there's a lot of crossover between modalities. It's not like you do an Orion or a disconnect or a reconnection or a matrix or whatever, or a theta therapy, all these different pranic healing, and it's going to be different to what you've done before. There's all, because there are beings out there that are giving us all this technology as we clean up our negative thought forms here on the planet. Yeah. And timeline is very similar to something I studied in Matrix. Yeah. Cool.
I mean, the interesting thing is, as you use them more and more with different clients, you develop your own style anyway.
Yeah.
And I really trust myself to do that now. It was a bit sort of hit and miss at first, thinking, am I doing the right thing? But I've always noticed, even if I make a slight mistake in the technique or I'm not entirely sure where my intuition's leading me, it always does end up in the right place.
Absolutely, because you're working outside of time and space. I just had a client before we came onto this conversation, and I was taking her through a process, and she misunderstood what I said. She said, "Oh, I thought you said go back, send my vision back, and you said send it forward." And I said, it actually doesn't matter, because we're working in the realm of energy. We're working outside of time and space. It's like when you say go up and meet God, or meet your spirit guides up, or you could also say go in and go into your heart and meet them, or you could take them out through their third eye or into their heart chakra or out through their crown. It really doesn't matter. Like all of it works.
Yeah.
It all works. Yeah.
What I've actually found, like with hypnosis, because I often record subliminal or hypnotic meditations for the clients I work with, like really specific to the issue. And what I found is actually the less specific you are, that sometimes the more powerful it is, because it really engages the person's imagination. And like if you're saying you will be in light and this, that, and the other, if that's actually not what's going on for them when they're relaxing, you actually turn them off and take them out of their deep trance.
Yeah.
So more than anything, I will say things like, and the experience of what you're seeing feels stronger. And as you notice it's getting stronger, it takes you deeper and deeper.
Nice.
And so you're just connecting into whatever they're experiencing.
I want to come and have a session with you. Do you do them online? I'm thinking with 3 kids and a busy business, you probably, where are you going to get the...
It's all online.
Do you do it online? Oh, yeah.
The first time I hypnotized somebody online, oh my goodness, it was like they were on a phone, and of course their screensaver came on, and so I couldn't see. All of a sudden, the screen went black, and all I had was their voice. I was thinking, oh no, because like as when you're working with people in trance, you're watching them to see, how they are, to see if they're distressed. I'm always matching my breathing with their breathing, because it increases the empathy and it really helps me to tune in. And I couldn't see her shoulders rising. I was like, oh no, I can't see her breathing. But it just worked out anyway. So if I do it online, I do say, don't put a screensaver on. I know. Yeah. There's a lot of people that did hypnotherapy took it online over 2020 because of the life circumstances. And a lot felt that they didn't want to do that because they were so used to being in person, and there was like a safety thing, but it actually does work out. There's heaps of people uploading stuff of online hypnotherapy on YouTube. Heaps of it. Yeah. So, this is a wonderful time. Like there's so many resources for people now. This is a golden age. If you want it to be, it really is.
So with your hypnotherapy clients, where do you take them? Do you take them into past lives? Do you take them into LBLs, life between lives, or just depends? It's just whatever turns up. Absolutely
whatever happens is what's meant to happen.
Yeah.
Mostly kind of into childhood, unless they seem like they want to go into lives before lives or the last life, or even before that. I have some really cosmic people that sometimes make me go, oh my goodness. And with those sessions just kind of co-create themselves. So I've got like some real kind of, I don't want to say normies, because I don't want to sort of like, I don't want to kind of be derogative in any way, but I've got some people who really kind of need a very kind of practical and grounded in this reality kind of readings and sessions. And then the people who need to go far and wide and into different galaxies and times and spaces, that also happens. So I'm really kind of bridging it all. I'm holding for all possibilities. I put it in the clients. I always put it in the client's hands.
What time? How long have we been yakking? God, we've been yakking for ages.
And
you've got to go. Let's
have to go soon.
Just before we go, what is the astrology saying about, let's say, where are we? June, July, what's in the charts for, or even, the rest of this year? Is it?
I would say the theme of this year is waking up. Because like Saturn and Uranus are in a square pretty much for the whole year, and that's the real signature. Like we've got the hangover from last year where we had the Jupiter, Saturn and Pluto conjunction in Capricorn. That was huge. The Saturn and Uranus square is very much like, Uranus is about young people, far out people, woke. It's also about channeling. It's about people coming online. It's about shocks. And it's a very new kind of force energy. And Saturn is a bit male, pale and stale.
Male, pale and stale Saturn. Okay.
I've really kind of, given Saturn a bad name there. He's also really helpful. Saturn is how we get absolutely, how we can be grown up as well. He's also about adulting. So we kind of got this theme between being young and teenage and kind of that thrusting energy and the kind of, no, we need to be adults. And so I think a lot of people are right now, the people who are already on board are kind of creating the space for the people who aren't, who are looking for structure and rules and regulations. And there's a bit of a tense moment. I would say, can you hear that baby in the background going?
Baby in the background. Yep. You've got to go.
Hang on one sec. I'll invite him in. One sec. Hang on.
Looks like he's just woken up. Hello.
He's got bedhead.
Bedhead looking for the boob.
Oh, you're grumpy. Yeah, so here we go. There we go. There's the good stuff. I have pacifiers on my breast. It's great. It's like, there you go. There we go. Yeah, it's the tension. It's the tension between wanting freedom and wanting to fit in. And right now, people are all finding their place. And that is the difficulty. And that is actually bridging the magic and the mundane. Funnily.
Wanting freedom and wanting to fit in.
There's a big challenge at the moment for people. And I think there's a lot of people who are starting to question things now. I do think we're at the teenage years of humanity. We're about to become adults and we're about to start taking responsibility for ourselves. And of course, if you remember what you were like as a teenager, and I know what I was like, I demanded my freedom. And that was why I was out the house so quickly. I said, that's it, I'm off to France. Because, where you get restricted on your freedom, when you get the moment to take it, you do. And I think this is what's going to happen. And it's probably going to get a bit messy. I mean, longer term, there are some really big implications, but that's a whole nother show. And I'll happily do astrology. Yeah. I'll happily talk about it.
I demanded my freedom, but life gave it to me without me having to demand it, because mum dies when I'm about 16 and dad's pissed off. So I had freedom. Here I was, 16-year-old, all alone in the world, could do whatever I wanted to do. So I had the freedom that I was demanding, which was brilliant. Darling one, it's been just such a joy. And I suspect you're speaking about astrology for the Higher Self Expo for your talk.
Oh, yeah. I'm looking at the kind of background of it and how it used to be attached to astronomy, how astronomy and astrology were the same thing. Yeah. And also, like the idea of, can it be scientifically proven? Yeah. And obviously we can't put astrology in a petri dish. We can't put the whole of humanity in a petri dish. So the answer to that is no. However, we can look at how we can test astrology using observations. And so I'm going to be sharing how we can test it and use it, and how it's a practical tool, and also talking about some of the kind of, is it a coincidence or is this evidence? I'm going to list off tons of things. And so it's just an exploration of that, really. Brilliant.
Sounds brilliant. Can't wait. Thanks so much for being so generous with your time.
Oh, you're so welcome. I'm kind of random and been bouncing around my life a little bit.
It's been beautiful to hear it. Honestly, I just really feel like us sharing our stories really helps people, especially people who are, they're contemplating their journey. Where do I go next? Just listening to how other people did it is so helpful. It's just so helpful.
I spend so much time listening to other people that I forget how to tell my own story.
I think you've done a bang up job, darling. You've done really well. I was going to quiz you about all the people that you have on your show. Obviously, you've got your show, which is the Feel Good podcast, isn't it?
Feel Good Conversations.
Good Conversations. And that's on YouTube. And where is it?
Yeah, it's on YouTube. My channel is Louisa Tanner Munson. And then wherever I can get the time to share it, so it goes on Facebook sometimes, but if people look at the handle Feel Good Astrology or Louisa Tanner Munson, you'll find me. I'm on Telegram, Facebook, Twitter.
I'm a kind of Insta too. I don't spend too much time on Insta. I don't utilize it like I'm supposed to, but it's just too much to do. But
I think I have myself as Insta virgin. People look at my Insta and say, "You're not from round here, are you?"
I know. But what about your husband's podcast? What's his podcast called these days?
He does a show called Good Morning Portugal. So he's gone really practical. And funnily enough, the mysticism and all the magical occurrences follow him. So wherever he goes, like he did have the Barefoot broadcast for years. And then he set up a radio channel to help people with additional learning needs, and he did that for many years, and now he's doing Good Morning Portugal, helping people who want to come and live here and experience it, and connecting people around the world. So he does it every morning, and it's under the name Good Morning Portugal.
Fabulous. And that's on Good Morning Portugal. Is that on YouTube as well, or is that? Yeah. Okay,
and
cool.
Expats Portugal, I think it's called as well.
Expats Portugal. Fabulous.
Yeah.
Thanks, honey. One, I'll let you go and say hello to your Balinese friend. Look at her breastfeeding the baby. Don't you love that?
Solomon has risen. And
Solomon has arisen. Go tend to those children. Big love to you. Thanks for being on the show.
Lots and lots of love to you. Thank you so much, Karen. Love you to pieces.
Amazing conversation with Louisa. We didn't get too much into astrology, did we? Anyway, I loved hearing her story. She was saying to me afterwards that, she is having conversations on her podcast shows with, like me, with all the speakers from the highest. Well, not all of them. There's like 36 of us. We can't get through everybody, but with many of the amazing speakers. She had William Linville on her show as well, who I've just had on my show a couple of weeks ago, who is that, I called him the real K-Pax. Oh my God, he's just so amazing. So she's been having conversations with people like that too. And she was sort of saying, I don't feel like I've got as much to share as these amazing, spiritual, psychic, galactic teachers. But I loved that conversation with her. It reminded me of my journey, as we listen to our stories, to our journeys, it reminds you hear your own journey and somebody else's journey. And that's the beauty of sharing our stories. I totally want to go to Portugal and visit them. I just love their setup. It sounds amazing. It just sounds amazing. It sounds so beautiful. And the fact that she's moved in with this beautiful older woman and that she's become part of the family. Oh, so nice. So nice. And all the kids and the animals and everything. It's how life should be. I was amazed to hear, my throat's gone croaky today. I was amazed to hear that so many people are leaving Portugal. I didn't know that. It's such a beautiful place. I was there when I was really young. I was living in the Algarve. I was working for a youth hostel. We used to call us hustlers. I was working as a hustler. We used to get on the trains and hustle people to come stay in the youth hostel, with our little flyers. Do you want to stay at this youth hostel? And some English people owned the youth hostel. And we used to live in these dormitories with all these bunk beds. And I was 19 and gorgeous, brown, long legs, hustling people to come and stay in youth hostels in Portugal. Oh my God, those were the days. I had so much fun. So much fun. That was just one of the jobs as I was backpacking around Europe. I'd stop in places and get a job and work for a while, then get on a train and travel around, sometimes with my friends, sometimes by myself, picking up people as I went along. It was just magical. And I didn't realize at the time how magical it was. Just life can be so magical like that when you just live in the moment and go with the flow. Live in the moment and go with the flow. That's life. No matter where you are, what you're doing, live in the moment and go with the flow. Because whether you hear your guides or don't hear your guides, you're always guided and protected and spoken to. It's just synchronistic. Deepak Chopra called it synchrodestiny. Synchronicities just happen one after the other after the other. Yeah, I didn't really have too many desires in those days. Just, I don't know, the next moment, the next person I could meet, the next adventure I could go on, earn a bit of money along the way. Those were the days, young and free. Couldn't do that today in the current climate that we're in the, the current health crisis climate that we're in. But that will change. It's not forever. Anyway, it's been wonderful sharing with you again today. And yes, who's coming up? We're getting galactic in the inner sanctum next month. Well, in July, with Sue Walker coming in as a guest, and she shares her communication with the Ponti, who are ETs that have a base under the Sandia Mountain in New Mexico. They've been here for probably hundreds of thousands of years. Their lifespan is hundreds of years. Some of them, I think, live up to like 500 years old. Some ETs live for thousands of years. Very different lifespan to humans. So, they're not so, well, they're interested in disclosure. Disclosure is happening rapidly this year, which is kind of exciting. There are a lot of people saying that the mainstream media have been reporting, UFOs or unidentified flying objects, unidentified flying phenomena, aerial phenomena, UAPs, they're calling them now, not UFOs, UAPs, unidentified aerial phenomena. Anyway, it's the new lingo for the mainstream. But as you know, if you listen to my show, there are people who've been talking with aliens, to aliens, are aliens forever. So it's no big deal to us in the conscious community, but it is awakening in the mainstream mind through the mainstream media outlets. And there are some people that are saying, because they reckon there's going to be a false flag, we're going to be fighting some fake alien war, and everyone has to be scared of that. We've been scared of the disease that's going to kill us, and the next thing that they're going to pump out, the fear porn they're going to pump out is the alien invasion. But I just don't see that happening. As a psychic, there's a lot of people talking about it, but I don't see it happening. I really don't. If they try, it's going to totally backfire on them, and disclosure will happen in this world. It's very exciting, and we will once again rejoin our galactic brothers and sisters. So that's Sue in July. Sue Walker, and Reverend Otter is her partner. They both communicate telepathically with the Ponti. And of course, mid-July is the High Self Expo on the Saturday, Sunday, 17th and 18th of July, where we'll have 36 amazing speakers from around the world enlightening us to how science and spirituality meet. It's the theme. Not everyone stays on the theme. They might talk a little bit about it, but everyone just is going to share what they're going to share. So it's an exciting month, July. And remember to buy the book if you haven't already bought it and have a read of Awakened by Death. Thanks again for listening and watching, and please remember to share the shows and, leave your comments and, subscribe. Big love. Bye for now.